Hello, everybody. Welcome to Scott McMeans with Action Coach. I've got Eric Diamond here with me today. He is the CEO and co-founder of Central Kitchen right here in Cleveland, Ohio. We're going to hear his story. We're going to hear what he does to make businesses successful within the food industry. Before we get to that, let me introduce or let Eric introduce himself. So the camera and the microphone are yours, my friend. Go ahead and introduce
Perfect.
yourself.
Appreciate you having me on. Yep, Eric Diamond, as you said, co-founder and CEO of Central Kitchen. A little bit about me, just personally. Grew up in Cleveland, grew up in Lakewood, Ohio. Went to St. Ed's, jumped around a couple different colleges, ended up graduating from Baldwin Wallace with a degree in English. Thought I would kind of move to Maine and teach and write and read but life had other plans. Ended up going into banking, spent over 20 years in banking. During that time, raised four boys and currently have four boys and uh, two stepchildren. Recently remarried in June. And so we've got a big family. So I spent a lot of time in banking. Banking is one of those things where you can make a lot of money, you can learn a lot, it exposes you to a lot of things. I just didn't like being in banking. It was just kind of soul sucking to me. And so when the Great Recession kind of was happening and, banks were putting companies out of business, I kind of jumped ship and went to an organization called ECDI. And so what ECDI did, they were in Columbus at the time and they were expanding into Cleveland with the help of the Cleveland Foundation. And so I was brought on to open up their Cleveland office. And what we do is they still do, they're actually the number one micro lender in the country. They do loans to entrepreneurs who can't get bank funding. And so I was doing that, ended up opening up offices in Toledo, Akron, Cincinnati. And kind of during that time, 2013, early 2013, the building that I was in, my business partner, Gordon Premer, he's my business partner now. At the time, he was my landlord. He came to me and said, "Hey, look, on the first floor of this building, I've got this commissary kitchen that Cleveland State was utilizing as their kitchen. Cleveland State had built out the new campus, and they moved the kitchen to there. And he said, what should I do with this space?" Well, we had a lot of entrepreneurs coming to us that wanted to be in food, but they had really nowhere to produce that food. So they were working out of church kitchens or doing it illegally out of their house. And the concept of a shared use kitchen had recently, around that time, started. There was about 100 of them at that point throughout the country. So Gordon spent some time looking at different models, and we came back, and in 2013, we opened up Central Kitchen, May of 2013. And our concept was probably 90% of the people walking through the front door would be existing businesses that just needed a space to grow. But what we found out was 99% of the people coming through the front doors just had an idea. And, they had
Mm.
grandma made great pickles and I want to do it. Or I've got this secret sauce to hot sauce. And, but they had no concept of business. So we pretty quickly pivoted and started the craft food classroom, which is, we're still doing it to this day. The next one is in March, where we have 10 companies at a time come through and take 6 weeks of training about what it means to be a food entrepreneur. So we do that both in person and online. We've had about 1,000 people take that course. And so since 2013, we've had 850 companies come through. I left ECDI in 2015 to kind of take over Central Kitchen on a full-time basis, because at that point, Gordon and I were just kind of running it part-time. Um, we've had, like I said, over 850 businesses come through. Probably the largest being Cleveland Kitchen, which was formerly Cleveland Kraut. They started making sauerkraut out of wooden barrels in our incubator and selling them at farmers markets, and they'll do 70 million this year in sauerkraut sales. So yeah, it's been quite, there's a lot of stories like that, but they're obviously definitely the biggest. So that's kind of a synopsis on me. Love cooking, gardening. We've got two crazy dogs, which hopefully you won't hear in the background, but that's us.
That's fantastic. It's what I'm gathering out of this. Eric, you've kind of figured out a way to go start up great idea to business success. I know Cleveland Crowd. Okay, that's an amazing opportunity or amazing business to go to 70 million. But I'm certain with 150 different companies that have come through the front door, there's been a lot of success that's been shared not only within that building but outside of that building because whatever you're teaching them they're getting a chance to take it somewhere else and apply it into their own business. So that's really cool. Let me
Yep.
ask you, what happens inside the common kitchen or the shared use kitchen? Is it
Yeah.
people have a designated time that they come in and use it, or are all these companies in there at once and they're just not fighting for it, but there's it's crowd. How's that work?
Yeah,
Explain to me.
great question. So we very early on went with a software called the Food Corridor. So the kitchen is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You pay a quarterly membership fee to be part of it, and then you pay by the hour. So what happens is you go onto our app and you say, I want to come in on Tuesday from 3 to 5, and I need to use the mixer and the, tilt skillet. And it'll block it off on the calendar so nobody else can book it. That's your time to come in and produce. So we've got people that come in every single day, and then we've got people that might come in, twice a week. We got people that come in once a month, just kind of depending on where they're at in their business. So inside that space, it's a fully licensed kitchen by the Ohio Department of Agriculture. And what we do is we provide the training through the craft food classroom. We then help them get all the licensing that they need through the Ohio Department of Agriculture. And then we help them scale their product. So, you might be making pasta sauce in your kitchen out of a 5 gallon, kettle. You come to our kitchen, a 20 gallon kettle, and it's not always just simple math to scale that recipe. So we help them with that and then help them source their packaging. If they need help with branding, help them source their branding, and then help them get into farmers markets, which is really what we recommend. It's, a lot of people come in and say, everybody who tries this, loves this
Yeah,
apple pie that I make, right? And we're like, that's great. Have you ever sold one to somebody who's not a family member? And so farmers markets allow them that opportunity to test their product. And then once we feel that they're ready, we'll invite them to a pitch day, which we do twice a year, bringing in kind of local retailers, everyone from Myers to Heinen's, the Market District, Dave's, Mark's, and have them pitch to get into retail. Um, and then at that point, they're up and running.
that's amazing. Now, what I found interesting when we first had our chat, I've had a couple of your companies on our podcast, and the uniqueness of their stories. I was trying to brag that I've had a chance to connect all these people in one form or another. You're like, yeah, they already know each other. They've
Yeah.
been in our kitchen before. But the answer to this, I guess the answer to the question about food and how you get that done is you got to find somebody that you can partner with that's willing to train you and teach you and show you the ropes because God, it might be delicious, but that's your aunt telling you how good it is. It's
Right.
not the guy 4 blocks down the street that says, I really like that. I want to buy more of it. So I really like the story here. I love what you're able to do. And I love how the different people come and go and they're all able to get to a point of success
Right.
because they're being trained and taught along the way. That's really cool. So I gotta suggest though, not every business is perfect.
Right.
So what are some of the challenges that you've seen with Central Kitchen? Like what is it that you've come to learn, or what are the challenges you think people should know about as they're starting their own business?
Yeah, I think, well, that's a great question. When we created the craft food classroom and designed it, one of the first things, after having worked with these companies for about a year before we created the craft food classroom, one of the things we decided, instead of starting with a business plan or a business model canvas, we were going to have them write their life plan. Like, what is important in their life to them? And then how is this business going to, integrate into that? Because, a lot of times you have people come and saying, like, look, I want to do this because I want to be my own boss and I want to work 9 to 5 and I want to have weekends off. And we always tell them, like, look, entrepreneurship is the only job where you're going to give up a 40-hour-a-week job with a salary to work 80 hours a week and make nothing when you first start. And you've got to, understand that and be prepared for that. And then when you get past that, it kind of all comes down to the same things like who's your customer, who's your competitors,
Mm-hmm.
how are you going, what's your pricing going to be on this product? That's a huge one. Because a lot of times what we see is people come with a price and we're like, well, that, yes, that's the price for the ingredients and all of that, but you've paid yourself nothing, right? So there's no profit involved in this. So you really don't have a business, you have a hobby at that point. And um, you really need to figure that out. And like we have this one gentleman come in and he really did have probably one of the best tasting barbecue sauces I've ever had. Barbecue sauce is a really hard area to get into retail because there's so many of it. But this guy's barbecue sauce was phenomenal. But he used all of these heirloom peppers and all of these high-end ingredients so that when we priced it out, a bottle of barbecue sauce was going to be about $17. And we said, there's just not a market for that, right? I get why your friends and family rave about this, but unless you want to cut some of those ingredients out,
Never going to
you
work.
have a, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And we tell people very upfront kind of what we believe about their product. And sometimes we're wrong. I mean, Randy's Pickles was one that very early on came to us. And I said, Andrew, no one's going to pay $6 for a jar of pickles. And he says, well, I'll see. Right. And here we are, you know, 5, 7 years later, and he's still selling $6 jars. And actually, I think he recently sold the company, but yeah. And it's still, they're nationwide now. And so sometimes we're wrong as well. But kind of helping them understand that, and then really like sourcing of the ingredients. Some people are very matter of fact that, look, I never want to be a national player. I want to be just a regional player because I want to be able to have an impact on the local economy. So I want to be able to buy local, source local of my products. And so helping them come up with partnerships to go directly to farmers to be able to buy their produce, or different ingredients that they need for their product. But I think the big ones are kind of branding and that price point,
Mhm.
branding especially, because it's one thing to have a brand when you're in a farmer's market, but then when you're pitching retail, it really needs to be a stepped up. It can't be something that your cousin did on the side for you, right? It's got to be true branding and understanding nutritional panelings and understanding uh, allergen and paneling and things like that. So it's got to be and we always tell people like that's going to be your biggest cost if you want to scale this, is you're going to need to spend some real time on nailing down your brand.
I appreciate that because branding is important. They got to know who you are, what you stand for, what your product's going to do for them in a value proposition. That's a huge piece. The one thing that I wanted to touch base on, I think it's a lesson that most people need to learn, and I wouldn't say you slide it over it or slid over it. It was the ability. Yes, sometimes we're going to be wrong,
Yeah.
but if we learn from whatever we did wrong, we can adjust and be better moving forward. And I think that's the one thing that if you're going to take on the role of an 80-hour work week and not make a lot of money, you've got to get used to being uncomfortable. You got to get
Yes.
used to, I'm not going to be 100% right, but at least I'm 80% there and I can learn the other 20. Let's keep moving forward. I think that's a vital piece of what you guys do, is helping people understand it's okay to fail as long as you fail forward and you learn something from what you were expecting to happen versus what actually did happen, and then make the adjustments. Like you said,
Right.
the,
That's a great point, because I think the people that have been most successful coming out of the incubator are the people that were open to be coached, open for
Mhm.
feedback, and actively sought out, feedback, not just from us, but from others in the area. And, meeting with the Heinens and really listening to them, being like Heinens, being like, we like your product, but we don't like the brand. Or if you did XYZ, we'd be willing to carry it. Some people hear that and it's like, oh my, you know what? Screw it, I'm done. That was a
Yeah.
failure. And other people are like, they take that to heart. And then, they come back in 6, 9 months with the Heinens again and say, hey, we took all of your feedback. What do you think now? And, I've seen many of those companies that on their first pitch don't get in, but they take the feedback and they adjust. And so what we do is every quarter we kind of rank the people in the kitchen through this metric system that we developed. And one of the areas is, are they coachable? Are they going to
Yeah.
are they gonna listen to us or the advisors that we put in front of them? Um, do they know what they don't know and are willing to, allow individuals that have been there, done that, provide them that guidance and be humble about it?
Yeah, knowing what you don't know is a huge piece, I think, right? It's okay to not know everything. The one point that you made that everybody, I think, really needs to pay attention to is when you take feedback, take it in and be genuine about what that feedback means. It's not criticism to break you down and make you quit. It's criticism to make you realize there's opportunities for growth and you have to come back. Those that fight and keep coming back are the ones that ultimately win, because somebody along the way keeps telling them, remove that, add this, take that out, put this in. And before you know it, they have the perfect product. But if they would have taken it as criticism and kind of puckered up and not
Yep.
want to do it, then that's when they fail. You've
Yep.
got to constantly be moving forward. And that's one of the things that I do my very best to teach with my clientele as well. Let's keep moving forward. Let's take a lesson and move. Because if we stay where we are, we're going to be right where we are. There's
Right.
nowhere we got to move forward. I love that. So, what are some of the biggest lessons you think if you were to give um, a brand new business owner walking in the door? What's the one lesson you think they should learn as they're starting a business becoming successful?
They got to understand their numbers. I mean, they really need to understand their numbers. That's where all too often, I think people make the mistake of they're afraid to price their product for what it's worth, and so then
Mhm.
they kind of go into, with a lower dollar amount, and then they're surprised that they're not making money, and they just don't understand what their overhead is. They don't understand where the money is being, going to, right, and what they're spending it on.
Yep.
And, we'll sit down with customers and go over their financials, and it's like, okay, is there a better place to source these eggs? Because, eggs right now is one that's anybody who has a product with eggs, it's just, right now it's like they're not making any money because they have to adjust to the egg prices. But like really understanding what your numbers are and getting somebody, whether it be, there's a lot of free support out there that'll teach you how to use QuickBooks or a different
Mhm.
programs, or outsourcing that to somebody. It's not as expensive as you think. But I think number one is really understanding what your numbers are, and then understanding what separates you from your competition. Um, and the great thing about kind of local food producers in this area is Cleveland's a foodie town. People want to try different things. And I think some of the best feedback they get is not only at farmers markets, but when they do get into retail and they start demoing their products to clients and getting direct feedback from them. And then understanding that feedback and being like, oh, that's a great idea. I should change my packaging, right? It would
Yeah.
be, better if they could see the product inside of it. And but yeah, just understanding what your client wants and delivering that to them. We just actually Saturday, through a partnership with PNC Bank, we opened up a stand at the West Side Market. So we've got six vendors in there right now for the next 3 months, and then we'll rotate to another three. And I was down there on Saturday. And the beauty of that stand is the clients were talking directly to the entrepreneurs, right? So it's like the one product in there is a unique product. It's sea moss, and sea moss has a lot of health benefits. It's very well known in Caribbean communities, but not so much in this area. And it's expensive. But the amount that she was able to sell, because people stopping and asking, well, what exactly is sea moss? And her walking it through and how to use it. And, I think when I left, she only had one jar left. She was about to sell out. And, but being able to have that feedback, that direct, correspondence to the client, that helps you start. And then when you get to be as big as Cleveland Kraut or now Cleveland Kitchen, the brand has to stand on its own. But it takes a lot of that work to beginning to get that brand out there. Brand is more than just a logo, right? It's the
Yes.
story behind it. It's why you're doing it, et cetera.
Yeah. You tell a good story there about somebody on site talking to the clientele, the potential client, somebody's going to buy their product. Why are they buying it? Because they're being educated, right?
Yes.
Okay, so one of the things I think you made comment to is what does my competition do? What do I do that separates me from my competition? And the way you just explained it, I think makes a whole lot of sense. This is a unique product that nobody's necessarily aware of in this area because it's not commonplace. So
Yep.
when people ask questions, you're not selling them, you're educating them. And through that level of education, oh my God, I totally want this, then they go buy it. What I think most business owners need to recognize too is when they're being a salesman, they need to pay attention to you are a professional facilitator of somebody making a buying decision. And when
Yes.
they're about to buy, don't get in the way. Step out of step aside and let them buy it because you just told them exactly why they want to buy it. The
Yep.
value proposition of every product is right there. It may not be for everybody, but when you educate somebody, they may find themselves needing that product because they had no idea what it was. So I
Yeah.
give you credit for kind of setting up that situation. And that for the audience, I want to make sure every Saturday that's at the West Side Market, or is it all the time at West Side? How's that work
All the
out?
time. It'll be there every hour that the West Side Market's open. We'll have vendors there. So basically, these six vendors are taking turns manning the booth, and they spent a lot of time last month meeting with each other and understanding each other's brands, and so that they can sell on their behalf if they're not there. And I was just looking at the numbers, and everybody did great at the West Side Market on Saturday, and the person who did the best wasn't even there. It's just these two people that were manning the booth that day really understood their product and was able to sell it for them.
That's outstanding. So wait a minute. You had somebody that wasn't there, but representing their business was two other people that knew it well enough that they sold it.
They sold it, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, while we have six companies in there, we can't have six people behind that stand. It's just too small. So they take turns having two or three of them there at a time. And, but like I said, they spent a lot of time understanding everybody else's product so that they can sell. And the great thing is when I was leaving on Sunday or Saturday, Aaliyah Edwards, who has a company called Mac Attack, she kind of pulled me aside and she said, this is going to work really well here because we all want to see each other succeed,
Yeah.
right? So I got just as excited selling my mac and cheese as I did selling, Marocc's gourmet soup. It was like, oh, cool, he had another sale today.
That's
And so,
fantastic.
wanting to see each other succeed, which has quite frankly been the byproduct that I didn't think of when we started this kitchen, is that community of entrepreneurs being in that space, all starting out at the same point. They're all startups, right? And so
Yeah.
they rely on each other. Like, okay, which markets are best to go to on these days? And oh, where did you source that label from? Or I just found this new printer that's 20% cheaper than the printer I was using. And they
Yeah.
have those resources amongst each other. It's like people walk in and they say, we do have cameras and things like that, but they say, well, how much theft happens in here? And I said, I could think of one instance over the last 10 years where something went missing. I said, more often than not, like I remember this one guy, he was freaking out. He just bought this brand new piece of equipment and it was really expensive and it came in and it was gone. And I turned on the cameras and I went back and looked and I called him and I said, hey, your wife has it. And he calls her and she's like, oh yeah, I picked it up because I wanted to like take it to get serviced. And he's like, well, you should have told me. But like, it doesn't happen because they want to see each other succeed so
Yeah.
much that it's like, hey, if you run out of an ingredient and I have it, just go back there and grab it. Like, that's fine. It'll all work out in the end. And
Yeah.
so that's been very helpful.
I love the idea of abundance being a prevailing thought process with entrepreneurs because again, you're talking about pickles, you're talking about mac and cheese, you're talking about soups. They're not all this. They are not looking at the same client, but the same client could want all three of them. It's a
100%.
unique mindset, right? And when you change your mindset from we're in competition to how do we all succeed? Because there's so much business available for anybody to take advantage of. Why are we so focused on this one customer that didn't want me? Come
Right.
on, you want somebody else. The next person that shows up is probably going to want me because my stuff is that good. I think we have to have a mindset of abundance because it makes things a lot easier. That's just my thought.
Agreed. I love that.
Yeah. So we're getting close to the end here. I wanted to ask you one final question if you're okay with
Yeah. Yeah. Please.
it. I'm going to dump you in a time machine and send you back. You're going to find an 18-year-old Eric Diamond. The two of you are going to sit on a park bench. What do you talk to 18-year-old Eric about?
Wow. That's a great one. I think for me, I would tell him not to chase the dollar, but to chase what makes you happy and the dollar will come. So, I talked about being in banking and, banking afforded me a lot of things, but I look back on it now and it was like,
Mhm.
I can't necessarily say this, but yeah, there's like, I kind of wasted 20 years. I should have done what I'm doing now back then. And quite frankly, even back then, I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I just didn't know that it was going to be in the social entrepreneur realm. And, starting out, when you start an incubator kitchen, that's a nonprofit, you're scraping by. But the joy of building that, just like even like I was telling my wife, like how cool is it that I had this idea in July and here we are in February and we have a stand at the West Side Market. Like that's to
Yeah.
me, like not only, financially getting reward from it, but looking at it like, gosh, we've had over 850 companies come through and start businesses. Not all of us succeeded, but at least tried because we had this space. So I think number one is that. And then number two, something that I would just stress, and it has always been an important part of my life, which is, don't do anything in spite of your family, right? So, having four boys growing up with four boys, I made sure that I had a career that I could be there for the track meets and all that. That was really important to me.
Yeah.
And some people it's not. I remember I was just thinking about it this morning in the shower. I was listening to a podcast called How I Built This, and one of them was a guy from 1-800-Flowers. And I can't remember. He sold his company for hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And you know, they said, he talked about working nights and weekends and holidays and working through his breaks. And the fact that he didn't really get to see his two kids grow up. They don't have a very close relationship because he was never there. And Guy Raz, the moderator, said, do you regret that? And he said, absolutely not. I don't regret that. And to me, that was
Mm.
like, wow, like at the end of the day, right? What do we have is family. And so, making sure 18-year-old Eric understands that, like, it's okay to go out and be successful, but don't do it uh to the fact where your kids don't even know, your name, right? So and I've always instilled in all of my kids, like, go, what, don't worry about the money, what's going to make you happy.
Yeah.
And my oldest boy is incredibly brilliant and graduated from Ohio State in 2 years and went on to UCLA to get his PhD. And he
Man.
found his passion, which was teaching. Like, he loves to teach. And you don't make a ton of money being a teacher, but it is his passion. And he's been rated like the top teacher in his high school for the last 5 years in a row. And he loves it. He loves every second of it. So
That's
for me, I say
fantastic.
I did my job. I raised a good human and a good father.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. I wrote down this note, and I think everybody can take this message because I think it makes a lot of sense. Money always follows value. If
Yep.
you do something you're passionate about, people will find you because it makes sense to follow you because what you're doing is something that people want and they want to be attached to. And the one thing I would recommend is don't quit.
Yes.
You're right there. You being in the kitchen, you would know what happens to water at 211 degrees. Absolutely nothing. It's that
Right.
1 degree more. Just push 1 degree further, get to 212, make it boil. It changes state. Let's get through that one point of anger or the one point of frustration. Just push through one more, and you'll
Yep.
be there. You'll find your success.
Yep.
Eric, I want to thank you for being a part of the show today. This was great.
It was
Tons
great.
of lessons. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to seeing you because I'm going to go come visit you at the kitchen. This will be
Yep.
cool.
Can't wait.
I'm looking forward to it. All right, guys. Anything you need, all of Eric's information will be in the description down below. Get in touch, click all the links, and we'll see you guys all again on the next episode. Bye now.
Thank you. Take care.